Hi, I'm Rory Greener from XR today. I'm joined by CEO and co-founder of Looking Glass Factory, Sean Frayne, to discuss how XR is being leveraged on new end devices removed from VR and MR headsets. Thanks for joining me, Sean. I'm looking forward to getting deep into this conversation.
Yeah, thanks a lot for having me.
Brilliant. So why don't you kick us off by giving us a little bit of a background into Looking Glass and also introducing the technology that you develop and what sets your brand apart?
Yeah, so Looking Glass is based in Brooklyn, New York, and we make this lineup of spatial displays that we call the Looking Glass, and they let folks see content in 3D without needing to put on 3D glasses or a VR AR headset. And at this point, we make the only commercially available way for more than one person to see something in 3D without a headset.
Fantastic. And perhaps could you tell us from an enterprise point of view, because I know you focus on both consumer and enterprise products, but what hurdles, what problems were you looking to solve within that?
I mean, a lot of times you're in situations in retail or in a design review session or in like a museum. Any times where you have more than one person that you want to show 3D content to, where it's just too inconvenient to have everybody gear up. And in those situations where you want to have shared 3D experiences with more than one person, the Looking Glass is a solution that we've come up with. We've been working on this for over 10 years now and have had commercial products for the last few years, both for individual developers and increasingly enterprises to use our products. These include folks like Pixar, Louis Vuitton, and a number of others who have had those same challenges in wanting to show 3D content to groups of people, and there not being another way to do it until Looking Glass came around.
Fantastic. And talking about headsets equally, could you perhaps give us a bit of a background into the differences and the similarities between spatial monitors and XR headsets? Perhaps where do spatial monitors bring value where VR headsets do not? I imagine it's not a sense of one replacing the other. It's just an added benefit.
Yeah, I mean, it's all part of this larger ecosystem that's shifting from 2D flat interfaces to 3D spatial interfaces. Some that you gear up to experience, like with the Vision Pro or other headsets, and then others that you don't need to gear up to use. And they all serve a slightly different role. So I think with a VR AR headset, a lot of times if you want to explore a new environment and you need to feel like you're fully immersed and literally like in that new environment, those are a great solution, especially if it's something that one person is doing like in a location. But if you want to have like a window into another place, or you want to look at a holographic replica of an item that you might be doing a design review around, or might be presented at a museum or in a retail outlet, then in those cases, having like a holographic or spatial window, like what Looking Glass makes, is oftentimes the best solution. So headsets and spatial displays like what Looking Glass makes, I think they're all part of this overarching set of human-computer interfaces that are now becoming three-dimensional, and each of them will serve a different role in the coming years and decades.
Fantastic. And speaking on that note of being able to leverage XR by not using a headset or a head-mounted device, why is that important? Why is non-intrusive XR or AR important to major factors such as adoption of this hardware?
It's just convenience. I mean, I think we've seen in the last, few cycles of new technology platforms that the things that are the most convenient get folks in to whatever that new shift is. And so convenience is king in a lot of ways. And so having something that immediately like friends and family and colleagues can see in 3D without needing to gear up is more convenient than having to gear up. And again, like I was saying, there are times where you do want to go through the effort of gearing up, but there's a lot of times when you're looking at a spatial photo of friends and family, which you can do in our new Looking Glass Go desktop devices, or if you're doing a design review or want to look at that museum replica, you would want to do that in as low friction a way as humanly possible. And that's where the headset-free spatial interfaces, like what we make, end up playing a role. Consider the source of this comment, but ultimately I think a lot more folks are going to get their first taste of three-dimensional spatial experiences through these low friction or zero friction type of interfaces like what Looking Glass makes. And then from there, people can decide if they want to go in deeper and gear up to explore some of those experiences in a new way, or just get more of the low friction experiences in their homes and offices and what have you.
Fantastic. On that point, I imagine both, again, in consumer and enterprise point of views, this also then is a positive and a aid for accessibility towards XR content, mainly in terms of the human factor. Could you perhaps speak on the importance of that, again, in terms of hardware adoption and then also your journey and your roadmap forward?
Yeah, I mean, the idea of making spatial experiences more accessible is very core to what we make in our team. Like what we're doing now in this conversation over, over a two-dimensional video conference system. You could do that in a headset as well with avatars that are representing each of us, but you could also do that in the near future through a spatial display like a Looking Glass and different types of depth camera systems that let you basically have a three-dimensional spatial version of what we're doing right now in a very accessible way that doesn't require me to gear up or you to gear up. Someone from my team could come in, tap me on the shoulder, and we'd be able to have that experience in much the same way we're having the experience now in 2D, but with that level up of realism that you get from three-dimensional capture and three-dimensional display. And I think this is going to play across the board in a lot of different areas, from representations of not only video call conversations, but also objects and 3D models, new advanced ways to do 3D scans and captures that you want to share with other people. And of course, things like spatial memories that are increasingly, I think, going to be how we remember and share important experiences in our lives.
Fantastic. That was really insightful. And just to focus finally on the enterprise side of things before we wrap up, when it comes to introducing VR technology, smart glasses, namely the VR side of things, is still very much associated with gaming, and there's a bit of maybe a digestion issue there for seniors, etc., decision makers, to adopt the hardware. Do you feel like this solution, spatial monitors, despite being early in your years as a company, are you finding it easy to fit into the enterprise space due to this accessibility factor?
I mean, that's where we get a lot of pull. In a design review meeting where you're evaluating whether or not to make a certain part or go forward with a certain installation, and you really need to have that spatial awareness to share the details of the project with folks who maybe weren't intimately involved in doing the 3D design, but need to weigh in on whether or not it's a good idea to greenlight a project, for instance. In those cases, folks really want to have a headset-free solution and have that collaborative experience with others. So, we're seeing a tremendous amount of pull in enterprise specifically for that reason, where folks see the value of 3D and spatial experiences, but in some cases they can't convince enough folks in their teams to gear up. And I think that's where we're going to see the biggest takeoff with spatial interfaces over the coming few years. And eventually over time, it'll reach consumer. But as these things usually go, it gets the biggest pull in the early days from enterprise. And that's certainly what we are seeing in Looking Glass.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for all of that. I'll wrap that up there. I really appreciate your time today. That was really insightful for our readers and everything like that. So thank you so much for that.
Cool. Great. Yeah, thanks a lot. Appreciate the time.
Appreciate it very much. Thank you.